welcome everyone to Provincial Election Debate, co-hosted by the Cornwall Area Chamber of Commerce and the Social Development Council. My name is Todd Lalone. I'll be your moderator for the evening. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the territory of Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, original keepers of this land. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. I would like to invite Angela Barrow from the Cornwall Area Chamber of Commerce to say a few words. Angela?
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce, we'd like to thank you all for attending this evening's 2022 provincial election debate. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our candidates for coming this evening. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the Social Development Council of Cornwall for co-hosting this event with us, for the Cornwall Public Library, and your TV. We hope this debate this evening will allow you to make a more informed decision when it comes time to vote. Now I'd like to invite Carolyn up to say a couple words.
I'm used to it. Thank you, Angela. Merci tout le monde d'être avec nous ce soir. Merci à nos candidats et candidates. Great thank you to the Cornwall Public Library for allowing us to be here tonight, and to the Chamber of Commerce for co-hosting with us. It's been a great opportunity, and a great thank you to all of you for being here on this Wednesday evening. I also want to make a special thank you to our Lived Experience Advisory Council. The Social Development Council has recently completed a Vibrant Communities Safety and Wellbeing Plan. It's 52 strategies to implement across SDSG, Cornwall, and Akwesasne to create a better quality of life for everyone. Through that effort, we created a lived experience committee with 12 individuals living in poverty, facing adversity, who are really our main advisors through this whole process. They are the ones who wrote 3 of the 4 questions that the candidates will be asked on behalf of the Social Development Council this evening. So thank you to those individuals who poured their heart and soul into our plan, and also were able to come up with really great questions that hopefully will address some of the issues that they're faced with. Also, thanks to Grand Chief Abram Benedict, who wrote our 4th question on behalf of Akwesasne. I hope you get to learn a lot about our candidates and their parties, and vote on June 12th. June 2nd. Sorry. They don't have that much time. I think they wish they did, though. Sorry, I take it back. June 2nd, with the information that you are provided this evening. Sorry. Bonne soirée. It's okay. Niawa.
Thank you, ladies. She just wanted to point out that the polls are open, so get out and vote early. So thank you again, ladies. Let's get right into it. All 6 candidates for the provincial election have been invited to participate this evening. We have received regrets from Claude Tardif from the New Blue Ontario and Rémi Tremblay from the Ontario Party. However, we're blessed this evening to have join us Wendy Stephen from the Ontario New Democratic Party, Jacqueline Milner from the Green Party of Ontario, Kirsten Gardner with the Ontario Liberal Party, and Nolan Quinn from the PC Party of Ontario. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make their opening remarks. The order of speaking was determined by a random draw. Following the opening statements, we'll begin with the questions. The first 4 questions are written by the Chamber of Commerce, followed by 4 questions by the Social Development Council. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to each question with a 3-minute time limit. In the instance of one candidate making specific reference to another candidate, which never happens in these debates, that candidate will be allowed a 45-second rebuttal. 45-second rebuttal. If time permits, this is when we'll go to the floor afterwards for questions from the audience. Attendance members must identify which candidate their question is meant for. That candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer, and the other candidates can choose to answer the question if they so like. Each candidate will then be allowed 2.5 minutes for a closing statement. We'll go reverse order as we started, and the speaking order will be a reverse, as I just mentioned. Our timekeeper, Lily, will indicate when the candidates have 30 seconds left on the clock by raising a yellow card. Once a candidate has reached the maximum time allowed, she will raise a red card. We don't want to go too red. In the case of a challenge, the decision of the moderator will be final. I would ask the candidates to adhere to the agreed upon format and exercise professionalism throughout the evening. Thank you, and we will begin the candidates with their opening remarks. The first candidate to speak will be Ms. Gardner from the Liberal Party of Ontario.
Thank you. Thank you to the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce and the Social Development Council of Cornwall and Area. Merci. It's a pleasure to be here. C'est mon plaisir d'être ici ce soir. I'd also like to recognize the traditional lands of our Indigenous people. My name is Kirsten Gardner. My roots run deep in this great riding. I've lived here for over 45 years. Hate admitting that, but I'm getting comfortable with it. I consider myself an SDSG girl, having lived, worked, or volunteered in pretty much every part of this riding. I grew up in South Stormont, having gone to high school in Cornwall, and I live with my husband, son, and daughter in the lovely community of Morseburg in South Dundas. I entered politics to help people. I put my name on the ballot for the first time 4 years ago and was elected as Deputy Mayor of South Dundas and a County Councillor for Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry. I've been at these two tables advocating for issues that have great impact to us all. This includes a help to plan, finance, long-term care in our communities, fighting for mental health supports so that the police have the tools they need to help members of our community when they are struggling and in very vulnerable situations, fighting for education in the community to strengthen our schools, getting more doctors and nurse practitioners in our communities. When I say that I'm fighting for these, I don't mean that I'm sitting around the table nodding my head. I mean that I'm raising my hand, asking questions, and demanding answers. Each and every time there's been a roadblock put into place by the Ford government. There's been little to no representation in our great riding. My expectation as a municipal councillor is when I have a member of provincial parliament, I want them to work with me to make this riding better. I want to change this. I have a proven track record both in my professional career as a volunteer and as an advocate representing the folks in our community. It's time to raise the bar for what we need and how we are represented in our riding. We can't keep voting the same way and expecting different results. We're going to hear a lot tonight about parties and history and who did what and when they did it. I'm not interested in any of that. You vote for me to be a member of provincial parliament, I will represent you regardless of your political stripe. This election is about representation. Our riding has been forgotten. Sometimes around election time it's remembered, but it's been forgotten. We need to be heard and we need representation. On June 2nd, we all have an important decision to make. I'm hoping you'll choose experience. Let me continue to protect, connect, and represent at the provincial level. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Our next speaker will be Wendy Stephen, the Ontario New Democratic Party.
Good evening. It is so good to be here and with human people, not on a screen. So welcome. Again, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Social Development Council, the Cornwall Public Library, and also our fellow, my fellow candidates. It's good to see you. And Nolan, I got to say, 20 days in, and I hadn't met you yet. I was wondering if you were a real person. So I'm glad to meet you. Welcome. So tonight, I'd like to talk to you about what successive Liberal and Conservative governments have done for you up to this point. We've had Conservative representation here for a really long time, and I think that a lot of us can agree that things aren't really changing or getting better. If I had to sum it up in a word, I would use the word cuts. I'm an educator and I have worked on the front lines for over a decade, so I have been through the cuts of both Liberals and Conservatives. We have seen through this pandemic what happens when you cut and you don't properly fund and support public services. Things fall apart. Individuals cannot hold these services up by themselves. We need to support them. I've noticed knocking on doors here in town that there's a lot of poverty in Cornwall in particular. And I notice it, from one street to another, it can be very different. And I would argue that poverty is a policy choice. And I think that we can do better by everyone, truly. PC MPPs, like I said, nothing's improving. They don't even know Highway 138 exists. Like the Ford government is talking about building the 413 in Toronto for $10 billion. There was a 2016 Stantec report done here about fixing 138, and they didn't even know about it. So things like that have just, as Kirsten said, we're under the radar. Nobody even knows that Eastern Ontario exists. It's not being funded appropriately. So as an NDP MPP, I will show up for you. I will show up for debates, no offense. I will show up for door knocking, and I will show up to actually listen and talk with people. I am in a caring profession. I'm a mom, I have 3 kids, I'm a teacher, and I think that we can better represent all people, not just the wealthy, not just the highly educated. As a society, it's our job to lift people up, and we'll find that we're all better for it. We can make a way more beautiful Ontario, I think, than what we have right now. We're coming out of a pandemic. Things have been really hard. And let's do it differently this time. Let's not go back to the way things were. Let's try and make something that actually includes everyone. I really am excited because of the energy I've been feeling from people I've met in the community, and people want a change. They want something different. So I'm here to offer you that change. I hope that on June 2nd, you will vote for me. I'll hope to share the policies and platform with you tonight to show you that an NDP government is really what's best for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stephen. Our next speaker is Nolan Quinn from the PC Party of Ontario.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you to the Social Development Council for hosting this night, and your TV for putting it out there. So Wendy, welcome to the area. You haven't seen me because you aren't from our area. I am very involved in our community, always have been, prior to owning my store. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the debate that was last week. I was too busy at another event. And I'm not going to apologize for that. It's difficult to split myself in half, but I have been outdoor knocking quite a lot. So a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Cornwall, and I have my family and my wife, Kim. We live out in St. Andrews West. So I have 3 young children, Nora, Nevin, and Nolan. And I'm a proud graduate of St. Lawrence College in town from the Human Resource program. So I've worked at Dairy Queen pretty well my whole life. It was my first main job at 14. I did have jobs before then, but that was the one that really taught me my life skills. I started at 14. I was too shy to actually work the cash, so they had me as a cleanup kid. So I've worked every position in that store, from sweeping the parking lot to cleaning the toilets. I'm not afraid of hard work. Ever since I've bought the store 12 years ago, I've been working 7 days a week. And I know with this role, it will be a 7-day-a-week job. Quite a lot of people have asked me if I can handle it. I definitely can. I have a great management team at my restaurant. I have a wife that's very supportive, and my parents and my in-laws as well. I'm obviously doing this for the community, but for our children also, the future. With the amount of money we've spent both federally and provincially over the last couple of years, the debt that we rack up means less services for the future in that regard. And I'm extremely cognizant we need to live within our means. It's what I do at my restaurant, what I do in my family budget as well. So I have been involved in numerous charities in the area. So if you're from the area, you'd know that. The United Way, I was the chair of the campaign, so the face of our fundraising campaign for 2 years. It seems like a lifetime ago. It's pre-pandemic, so about 8 or 9 years ago. It was actually when I had my first child and got married during the 2 years that I was the chair of the campaign. So I'm able to balance the work-life commitment in that regard. After that, I joined the board of directors. I was on there for about 6 years, and I was the president of the board for 2 of those years. And I really realized the impact I can have in the community. At that time, I believe we had about 13 agencies under our belt, and I've jumped from there into the Children's Treatment Center. So something you'll realize about myself, if you haven't already, I'm very passionate about children's mental health and mental health. My wife Kim is a teacher just right down the road. So I'm excited to be here tonight, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Our last candidate to speak, and no reference to that, will be Jacqueline Milner of the Green Party of Ontario.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you out to the Cornwall Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Social Development Council. And thank you to the library for hosting and all of you for coming out this evening, and Cogeco Television, your TV. I'm Jacqueline Milner. I'm your Green Party candidate. How did I get into this? I've been questioning myself over the last little bit. Very busy. I've never been so busy. I am into this because it is time that we find solutions with respect for our planet. So if all of you are concerned here about your children, this is the person you want to vote for, because we cannot wait for any, solutions that do not respect the planet. I mean, it is just simply necessary, and we must do it now. Now, I know you've heard quite often over this election, this short election, we're going to get it done. Well, you know what? I'm going to get it done. The Green Party will get it done with respect for our planet. One last thing I would like to mention is, with great respect, we are here gathered this evening on the unceded territory of the Ogwa-Onwe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Ogwa-Onwe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milner. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will be going into questions. I want to thank our candidates for actually teasing the public with a little bit of sparring. But the only thing I'll ask as we go through the evening is we try and keep it respectful to the point that the viewers who are watching this evening, as well as the people who are here, really understand the party platforms and who they're voting for. So let's not lose focus. So ladies and gentlemen, the first question this evening will be, the pandemic shutdowns really hurt businesses. What is your plan to increase business confidence and the predictability and the economic growth and recovery of this province? And you'll have 3 minutes to answer. And then each candidate will start with one, then follow through, and I'll introduce you. And then we'll have an opportunity to follow up. And if you do reference another candidate up here, that candidate will have an opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal. So again, we'll turn the first question over to Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So I think that we can agree that governments up to this point have been heavily Toronto-focused in the GTA. There was an editorial recently about the 416 and the 905 and how everything else is considered other, including Ottawa, actually. So we really need to take a good look at what the current governments are focusing on as important to them. So the PCs have always said that they're here for business, open for business, right? But make no mistake, it's all about big business. During the pandemic, think about what kind of stores actually closed. It wasn't the big box stores, right? There were small business loans and grants, but they were either people didn't qualify for them or they were bogged down in the application process. So we need to take a look at that. The NDP, we're looking at a tax freeze. Well, we're bringing in a tax freeze on low and middle income folks because frankly, we pay enough as it is. And we need to get the wealthy few, so those millionaires, we need to get those really rich corporations to pitch in their fair share. It only makes sense when you think about it. So as far as going forward with businesses, it's 2022 and we really need to think differently, all right? The climate crisis is here. We need to be approaching jobs with a green mindset, and we need to grow our economy again, for sure. COVID had huge impacts. SDSG can thrive. There's no reason not to, but we've been ignored for so long. So what we need is someone who can actually advocate to get the funds here to the municipalities so we can do the projects that are needed here. NDP is going to bring broadband to rural communities here by 2025. which will certainly help businesses in the smaller communities in the riding. In order to compete, they'll have access to the global market that way. Will be able to market themselves online to a much bigger community. As well, the NDP, we're going to have a no surprises, steady, predictable funding for municipalities so they can actually do long-term planning. Instead of dribs and drabs here and there, which are kind of like Band-Aid solutions, and instead of downloading all this responsibility onto municipalities, an NDP government will actually pay our fair share. We really believe in that partnership, and we know that working together is how we're going to really get results for actual people. We've also got the Green New Democratic Deal, which is a complex and multifaceted approach to moving forward in this post-COVID economy. So it's a way to have green infrastructure. We're going to have manufacturing, tourism. I think the fact of the matter is that when it comes to business and economy, there's no simple solution. It's going to be complex, and it's going to come in many different forms. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Todd. So as a small business owner myself, who employs dozens of employees, hundreds over the years, I believe I'm the best candidate to be able to speak on behalf of small business, just based on the experience I have, especially during the last 2 years during the pandemic. The small businesses have had a difficult go at it, as we all have. Individuals have as well. And my restaurant has had its challenges as well, but we all had to pitch in and work together. So being a small business owner, I feel that we have been progressing in the right direction. If I didn't feel we were progressing in the right direction, I wouldn't be at this table tonight. I'd be worrying about my restaurant. All small businesses have had their fair share of difficulties over the last 2 years. One of the predictability elements that we are bringing to the table is producing our own supplies in our own province, keeping things local so that we don't have to rely upon other provinces or other countries or territories when the going gets tough. You know, speaking of the green factor of it all, keeping it local, there's less of a carbon imprint to be able to put onto that by buying local, supporting Ontario in that regard. So that is something that we are big on in the PC government and the PC party. Reducing the small business tax to 3.2% allows businesses the opportunity to recover from the last 2 years and not have to worry about taxes possibly being raised on the small businesses. Staffing, supply chain has been a challenge for small businesses, and knowing that the tax rate for small businesses, one of the largest employers in Canada, will stay where it is right now because we've reduced it is extremely important. So that's something I believe in. I've been very passionate about the community with my business, so I feel the pressures of the community to be able to give back to the community, and it's something that I believe every business should be doing, and this is just an extension to be able to go into politics and have a bigger impact on the local economy. The only pressure I've given my managers is to make sure that we're still an employer of choice and that we will still give back to the community when they need me to. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milner.
Hi. I too am a small business owner, have been for the last 20 years. The Green Party proposes rent control guidelines for all commercial tenants and protect existing tenants during lease renewals with standardized leases for businesses. Proposes helping small and medium-sized businesses transition to the green economy through financial incentives and grants. And yes, supporting local solutions and producers is vital. We've already seen this through the pandemic. This is so, so important. The Green Party has a vision forward with a building program which ensures investments in conservation will put money in your pocket and increase the value of your home. Provide incentives for businesses investing in energy efficient and low carbon equipment, buildings and vehicle fleets. Implement incentives for business that participated in training and certification programs in job growth areas such as green building, biomedical technology, renewable energy, and sustainable transportation. Set up social enterprise foundation to foster the development of triple bottom line businesses. Jobs, people, planet. The fund will provide grants and loans for young people in post-secondary education settings and in the workforce to develop their innovative ideas and bring socially impactful products and services to market. Modernize the Cooperative Corporations Act to reflect current business conditions and to help co-op businesses thrive. I mean, this will be spectacular. We have so many empty commercial spots you can see in downtown. Co-op business is just a fantastic solution for these properties. Support small business development opportunities for seniorpreneurs. As I look around the room here, there's probably a couple of seniorpreneurs here, both online and through existing innovation centers across the province. Provide support for young entrepreneurs to start green businesses through online entrepreneur courses and business modeling workshops and startup capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
Many don't know this, and I haven't shared it. I think I've shared it maybe a couple times, but not overly public. Just months before the pandemic started, I had actually opened a business that I had been working on for a year and had just signed 2 very lucrative contracts that would have enabled me to actually provide my services province-wide. I was able to pivot, but a lot of our community small businesses were not. Some did extremely well, some did not. And I will say that the lessons that we've learned in the last 2 years cannot be forgotten. We need to learn from it. And there was priorities. And in our part of Eastern Ontario, I heard, because I've been at this a while, I heard from my small businesses in my area, why can't we open? The big box stores can open. Why can't we open? We only have 2 or 3 customers in the store. They did not feel supported, and there is a massive rebound that is going to have to happen. And it's happening now. And we are so fortunate that in SDSG, we have some of the most talented people. So people have figured it out or they've tried different things. But we can't forget the ones that lost those dreams for the past 2 years. We have a list of things, and the one thing about platforms for all of us is they're binders. So you can sit there and you can give you the recipe list, but I would encourage for our platform to check it out. It is fully costed. And that's one of the lessons learned with our party, that you have to figure out how these things are going to get paid for. Everything is fully costed when you're looking at this. So things made, promises made in that platform, we say how, why, whatever we're going to recruit or direct or whatever. So I encourage you to check it out. But some of the things that we're looking at is actually eliminating corporate taxes for 2 years for the small businesses heavily hit by the pandemic. I always hear this whenever I go in to use my debit card or credit card, and the business will say it's too expensive. We're going to actually cap the credit card fees for small businesses. And sometimes it's the small things and sometimes it's the large things. We also are going to talk about putting Ontario in charge of immigration. We're going to have a question later on about getting people to actually staff businesses, because that's what I've heard is a major issue. We need to work on this, and we need to not forget, but we also need to be supportive. And there's so many things that can be added to that support network to help our small business.
Thank you. So that's the first question. Maybe I made the rules too strict here, but the truth is, there is a 45-second rebuttal built into this. But the trick is make reference to the other candidate. So if you make reference to another candidate, that's how you're going to get your 45 seconds in. But we're not going backwards. We're going to go forwards. We're going to move on to the next question. The next question is from the Chamber as well. The 2022 Ontario Chamber of Commerce Economic Report found that over 60% of businesses are experiencing a talent and labor shortage. 40% of the new jobs created in the next decade are expected to be in the skilled trades, but only 26% of young people aged 13 to 24 are considering a career in this area. How will your party support additional development of the skilled trades in Ontario and reskilling opportunities for new immigrants? And there is no time limit on me. So, again, we'll start off with Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Todd. So obviously there is a labor shortage. We're not going to hide behind that. It's a crisis right across the province in every industry that I've spoken to, whether it's agriculture, healthcare, education, supply chain, retail. There is a shortage. Can't pretend there isn't one. Hiring and mentoring youth at my restaurant has always been my passion. Hundreds over the decades have worked for me, and the biggest sense of joy I get is being able to give them that reference once they've learned the job skill set and moved on to their careers, whether it's in healthcare or education. There's a sense of pride and enjoyment to be able to know that I've helped push them along in the right direction and to give that responsibility and that work ethic that is needed in the job force. In 2020, we overhauled the College of Trades, which was long overdue to be modernized. Decades it had not been modernized to make it more effective and more efficient. We need to work harder to focus on the skilled trades for our youth to be able to keep up with the demand. And obviously immigration does come into play with that. Speaking to some of the farmers, they are looking towards our Ukrainian immigrants and seeing if they would be able to help the agriculture industry. Because right now, most farmers I've spoken to, it's the older generation that's sticking with it to be able to keep the farm alive in that regard. So the skilled trades, we've included coding in the high school. So there's been a revamp of the education curriculum, again, that hadn't been done in a long time. So to me, being able to set our students up for success is extremely important. But also getting them in the workforce very early on and teaching them those life skills that are needed to be able to move into their careers so that they can handle the pressures that come with a career later on in life. So I fully understand that we do need to really work on the skilled trades for our youth, and that is something that we need to push forward with, and it's something that the Doug Ford government and the PC party has been pushing for, is the skilled trades. Just looking at the unions that have endorsed our party this time around in the construction factor and in the skilled trades, just goes to show that we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on now, Ms. Milner.
The Greens would like to improve access to and equity in post-secondary education. They would immediately reverse the Ford government's cuts to OSAP by converting loans to grants for low and middle income students and eliminating interest charges on student debt. There would be free college tuition for 60,000 people over 4 years to train or retrain in jobs that support the green economy. Now, I'm not very familiar with the high schools these days and whether they still have shop classes. Ladies, you must know that. We need to start them again. I mean, you know, it's absolutely ridiculous that it's not offered in the high schools. I know CCVS, they have a beautiful shop there. If they're not using it, I mean, they need to restart using it. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on now to Ms. Gardner.
Thanks, Todd. Absolutely. Actually, it's nice. We kind of all agree. So that's nice. You cannot have any of this, though, without proper educational funding. And that means an investment in not just the education of our students, but where they're educated, the spaces, that type of thing. Those that are familiar with my work will know that I've been an education champion for almost 2 decades. And many of the suggestions that are on the platform for the Liberal Party, I believe in, and I believe that they're necessary. You know, bring back the full funding for grade 13. How many times have you said, my kid is not ready in grade 12 to make that decision, they need another year? Currently, they are not funded completely. okay? So one of the things would be bring it back for that exploration, bring back shop class. Well, there isn't shop class, bring it back, and bring it back young. I remember doing shop class in grade 7 and 8, welding and building things and all those things. You can't start this at the end of the educational career. You have to put these things into place during, and you can't do that without properly funding education. We would cap classes at 20, which for the rural schools would be massive, but for all schools, to have 20 students in a classroom with the teacher being able to support them. I'm a big believer that education is kind of that spark. The great teachers spark those interests. It has to be properly funded. We would also provide a $2,000 extra for those going into apprenticeship. If you are going into auto mechanics, you know there's tools to buy to go into that. We would also encourage and create the program, because it's one thing to say you're going to go into the trades, but if you don't have anyone to apprentice with, then that's a roadblock, right? So that roadblock needs to be dealt with. And when we talk about the support of allowing the kids to explore, that's also including entrepreneurship. We would put in entrepreneurship into the curriculum. So you can't just look at this stuff in one little vacuum. It's that all-encompassing view. And education is the foundation of so many of our communities. And I've said this before, and I'm quite agitated that it's even a political discussion. Education should be strong. It shouldn't matter on the party. It should just be strong for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So I think we can all agree, yes, the world of work is changing. And again, as we're coming out of COVID, things are looking a little different, which maybe is a good thing. To the modernization of the College of Trades, I would argue that we've actually removed that, enforcement of certification. So we're not seeing people who are being certified to do these types of jobs. I understand that would be a cost-saving measure, but I think that we should have those in place. College of Trades is an important thing, just like College of Teachers, right? So we're protecting the public by monitoring that. I think that the other candidates are absolutely right that education is the core of this issue. I am a public school elementary teacher. I've taught everything from SK up to grade 7, not JK or grade 8 for some reason. And my husband's a high school teacher as well. So I can see from the ground up that kids are interested in these things. They love hands-on science. And we were, in fact, given a new curriculum just recently. We still need some training on that for teachers, how to implement that. But yeah, it definitely starts with the young ones. STEM is definitely the way to go. It's very exciting to see them getting engaged and curious. Because it's through creative problem solving that we're going to, be able to help the environment and move forward together. We are a party that is really, really strongly in favor of public education and funding it correctly. We intend to take EQAO out. If you're not familiar, that's the standardized testing that we're seeing in grade 3 and 6 classrooms. It's something like $30 million that could probably be used better, perhaps to support the trades. That would be one great way to do it. We're also going to be looking at funding colleges and universities more appropriately. Anyone who has university-age children knows tuition is sky high, and I have 3 daughters, and I actually kind of hold my breath to think about what it'll cost when they finally go through. We are looking at, of course, more high school, shop classes, tech classes, those kinds of things, but with the current proposal of 2 mandatory online learning classes, those can't be hands-on just by nature of the way in which they're taught. So I think that in order to meet the needs of those hands-on experiences, we also really need to get rid of that online learning. We saw through COVID it doesn't work. It won't work in university either. We really also need to recruit and train people from diverse backgrounds. So equity-deserving communities like women, like people of color, Indigenous peoples. So we've got to move forward into the future, lifting people up and bringing them forward. The Green New Democratic Deal that I've already mentioned, it's really going to help us to revitalize the economy and address the climate crisis while supporting workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Quinn, because obviously there's a little reflection on you, so maybe you want to defend you and your party.
Would love to, yes. So funding is a conversation that's been around all three other candidates. Since the PC party has come into power, the education file has grown 9%. So there hasn't been the cuts that have been spoken about on the education side. It's actually grown since 2018. And we do have partnerships with our local colleges for the trades in that regard, and I think we need to grow with those to make sure that they actually stick with it and that we have those connections that are made in between the high school and the colleges. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stephen.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Absolutely. We can frame it however we want, but in the classroom with children and with teachers, we are not having the same support that we need. Special needs kids are not getting the support that they need. Teachers are not getting the training that they need, and we could do better. Everyone deserves to be successful, and I can tell you that online learning is devised to save money, it's privatized, and it's for profit. It's not what's best for kids.
Thank you. Any further comments from the other two candidates? We're good on this one. All right. We'll move on now to the third question from the Chamber of Commerce. It is important to spread economic investments across the province of Ontario to create prosperity in small urban centers, rural and First Nation communities. How will you ensure that rural Ontario receives its fair share to improve infrastructure such as broadband and natural gas, regional immigration programs, affordable housing, and build a thriving small town Ontario centre? Ms. Milner.
Firstly, as MPP, your representative, I would find out what you need through conversations with your municipal representatives, your band councils, local business, and local citizens. Then I assure you, I would work across party lines at Queen's Park for the investments needed in our communities. Regardless of who becomes premier, let's remember, they are there to serve equitably all the citizens in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Well, I've been fighting this for a long time too. It's actually the reason why I'm running. Regardless of the formation of the next government, if I'm the MPP, I don't care who's in power, I will fight for this riding. I will put this riding first. And yes, that is hard to believe that doesn't matter which party I'm telling you, it doesn't matter which party, even my own party. If we continue to get forgotten, I'm going to have a problem with that. It's why I'm running. We have had multiple discussions about trying to get natural gas. I've sat as a municipal deputy mayor and put letters in when our residents are saying, please, can you just have them extend the lineup? And we've been sitting at that table by ourselves as municipal and county councillors. It's very frustrating. So for me, this is not a party thing. This is a representation thing. How can you create a plan in Eastern Ontario for transportation and forget a huge chunk of Eastern Ontario? It doesn't make any sense. And it can't be something that's described as fluid or we'll have a positive conversation about it. Forgetting the 138 and the other arteries that eventually will become a transportation problem in our area is just not right. And I'm not willing to put blame on particular governments, only the current government, because I've had my municipal co-councillors have had delegations to the Ministry of Transportation about this. And for it to be ignored, and I will tell you, doesn't matter if it's red, blue, green, orange, if I am your MPP, this riding comes first. The politics come second. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So I am familiar with rural Ontario. No, I did not grow up in this riding, but I grew up between Kemptville and Merrickville outside a small village called Oxford Mills, if you're familiar. My parents still live there. So again, I know the joys and I know the struggles that come with that and small town living. So currently, and when I was growing up as well, so the funding formula is based on population. It's not based on need. So when you look to rural areas, what you're seeing immediately is needs that are not being met because the population is smaller. We can do better by funding municipalities appropriately, as I said before, stable, clear, transparent funding so that they can plan ahead and actually go ahead with projects that are needed. And also by having that government money for things like schools and infrastructure and transportation. You know, we're looking to put in 50% as well back into municipalities to help fund that. We can work together with municipalities and actually rebuild that relationship of respect that Kirsten had mentioned. So it's not a one-way street. It's not a top-down. It really needs to be a back and forth in order to get people the actual things that they need. As far as immigration programs go, I think we've seen the pattern that people who immigrate here usually go towards big cities, and for good reason, right? There are people they know, they can find the language, they have family and friends, and there are other supports there. So in order to attract immigrant families to other rural areas, we need to fund, settlement programs, make people feel comfortable and welcome. And that includes services in their language. We need, healthcare that's accessible for all, affordable housing, and it's really important that we continue to teach anti-racism in our schools. We need to work to build these communities that people want to live in and feel welcome to be there. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. So I live in St. Andrews West, so I can attest personally for the need to improve services across rural Ontario. Just 5 years ago, I didn't have reliable internet. Now I have high-speed internet. So the change is coming. Our province has committed more dollars to internet than any other province in Canada. Obviously, we're the most populous province as well. Our party is committed to growing rural and First Nations communities, but we've just begun. As I'm sure we're all aware in this room, the pandemic has changed our plan. We obviously had to pivot and focus on healthcare and focus on the recovery as well. But our party in 2018 was very, very committed into broadband internet in the rural areas, and that's something that we are focused on for finishing in 2025. Obviously, when the pandemic hit, the need for reliable internet changed drastically. My wife being a teacher and having 3 young children, we were using the internet pretty heavy during the day, and myself running the restaurant as well. So watching the cameras and the kids on their Zoom calls in that regard, while my wife was also teaching at the same time. It put a lot of pressure on our internet and made it something that is essential to live, just like running water and electricity. Our party is very committed into ensuring that the broadband internet does get across all of Ontario, but we do have a very broad province. As we've seen from the PC government, affordable housing is a priority. You can see 2 new units in Cornwall, on McConnell and on Pitt Street North. Those are the first new affordable housing units that we've had in this area in decades. And I understand that we don't want to blame any other government except for the current government that was explained before. But the 138 was actually paved twice during the last Liberal government. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't have money trees. The tax base is not growing. So the best time to be able to expand that highway was when we paved it. At the time, and it's been a few years ago, and they're in the progress of actually bringing it to fruition, it was a roundabout that County's Council was looking for, but that would have been before your time, Kirsten. So in the end, I'm going to speak with conviction. I'm going to speak with strength if I'm elected to go to Queen's Park, and very, very passionate for the area. Always have been and always will be. So I believe that the PC government got a little derailed with the pandemic, as did all of the governments. But our focus is on affordable housing and reliable internet, just to name 2. And obviously with immigration, we have slowed it down over the last 2 years federally with COVID, and that has put a little bit more pressure on all of our employers in Canada. So it's something that we do need to ramp up moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll spur it on here. A little bit of the conversation that we just heard was 138, lots of ideas. Maybe we can hear from the candidates, what is your idea that you're going to bring to Queen's Park to actually get it done? We'll start off with Ms. Gardner.
Sure, that'd be great. I will say that the provincial government, the current provincial government, holds control over several agencies that can actually enforce speeding on the 138. So if you wanted to have an automatic or a quick turnaround, providing a funding envelope for the OPP to have dedicated enforcement on that 138, which would turn things around, not solve all the problems, but would definitely that presence, that dedicated presence. We also have a Lancaster Ministry of Transportation scale. Those folks could do enforcement on the 138. So we can sit here and blame and whatever, but the reality is we can do that right now. Just get the officers there. On the officers, it's important to have them at the table as well. Municipal politicians, province officers.
Hey, anybody else care to chime in? Ms. Milner.
Yes, repeat the question, please.
Question is, a lot of people here, especially a question proposed by the Chamber of Commerce who depends on economic growth in this area. We have the 138 that we continuously read about. What would you do if you're elected outside of what your party would do? What would you do as the MPP to spur on development of 138?
Okay. So my understanding is there's supposed to be turning lanes put in, which have not been put in yet. Would that be correct? I rarely travel that highway, to be honest with you. I'm well aware that there are accidents and fatalities, so I usually go the roundabout route, nice and quiet and peaceful, and connect up to the 417 if I need it, and then go wherever I need to go. But certainly what the Green Party and I would propose is a sustainable transportation, community transportation, people who can travel and people who can use that transportation to get back and forth between Cornwall, all the communities in between, and Ottawa. We could really use that.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you. So I live on the 138. I live in St. Andrews. I travel the 138 all the time. I used to travel it a lot for the restaurant to go back and forth to pick up supplies. Truthfully, what it comes down to is dangerous driving skills. As Kirsten did mention, I believe having it policed properly is essential. And to be honest, I've noticed that over the last few months because I travel it on a daily basis. The police are there. The police have been stepping up and doing enforcement. Just yesterday when I was going up to North Stormont, the police were present twice on the highway. As for the transportation network that Jacqueline is mentioning, it was in place going to Ottawa and then COVID hit. That's why the parking lot was added in Cornwall and added along Cornwall Centre Road, in St. Andrews and in Cornwall. Unfortunately, the business case is not there at this point because a lot of people are working from home. So living and breathing the 138, I fully understand it comes down to aggressive drivers for the most part, but policing can help us with that. Knowing we are a distribution hub in this area, I believe adding some passing lanes in the short term will be a great solution to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. I have to agree there. Thanks. The passing lanes would be a wonderful addition there. One of the things, just speaking to the policing, I think that, yes, speed enforcement would be really helpful. Something to think about as a longer-term solution, and again, to do in consultation with councils and the police, would be to look at having speed catch cameras, because then we don't have any other factors considered in the speed. It is simply a direct measure of speed. And there's no, race, gender, any of that thing can be considered. So as far as equity goes, I think that would be something to consider.
Thank you. The final question submitted by the Chamber of Commerce is, what do you see as the two most important issues facing our community, and how does your party's platform present the best solutions to these issues? Ms. Gardner.
Okay. So as mentioned, housing. And it's a complex issue. We need affordable housing, but we need housing as well for first-time homeowners, families. We need to allow our municipal partners every opportunity to free up the space for affordable housing. We need to partner with the agencies that are the boots on the ground. A lot of times the solutions which don't turn out to be solutions come from the top, and it needs to come from the bottom up. And the process needs to be quicker. I cringe every time there's a conversation around housing and we talk about consultation or we talk about this. If you don't have somewhere to live right at this moment, having a bunch of politicians sit around saying that we'll get to it is not very comforting. Housing is fundamental right in Ontario. Our platform would fight to make sure that the residents in this riding have a safe and affordable place to live. And again, I mentioned municipalities. There's a lot of red tape right now with zoning, bylaws. It comes to our council table all the time. We need to make it easier and quicker. Once a municipality identifies a slot of land, and it could be something that they are going to donate, we need to make it a quick turnaround. Our platform also talks about helping and rewarding municipalities that meet or exceed higher housing targets. The other one is healthcare. For my two, we need to prioritize full-time roles in healthcare. And one of the things we will do is cover tuition for medical and nursing students working in this community. I just saw that a clinic in Cornwall has closed down. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from my doctor that also included my son and daughter, and she's retiring, and she deserves to retire. We are in a crisis situation in this area. One of the things that I love about our platform is we will cover the tuition for medical and nursing students that dedicate themselves to a rural community. And that is essential because right now, municipalities are ponying up the money and instead of it going to other things to try and recruit doctors. We need everyone at the table to solve both these problems. And it cannot be messaging from Toronto where these problems are looked at through a Toronto lens. We need to look at it through an SDSG lens, and those are my top two.
Thank you very much. Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. The first issue that I've heard from residents here is a lack of respect. Again, Kirsten just mentioned it, but the idea that everything is so GTA focused and people don't understand that Eastern Ontario also seems to exist. We're not getting our fair share of funding, and there is a lot more that we could be doing with that. We need to be, respecting our workers. They're feeling disrespected. Minimum wage is not enough. And this ties in with the second thing of affordability. That's something that people have really been concerned about. People are hurting. Life is really expensive right now. Wages aren't going up. Rent is going up. The shareholders are pretty happy and the profits are pretty good, but what about the rest of us? So as I mentioned before, we would be looking at a tax freeze on low and middle income folks, getting those extremely wealthy people and those really profitable large corporations to pitch in their fair share. We can save average people money by investing in public services. So the NDP is going to be bringing mental health care and dental to OHIP, so everyone can have access to tooth care. I don't know why we're considering these bones in our mouths to be something special or different. It is part of health for sure. We are going to scrap Bill 124 as well. Hired nurses, PSWs, we're going to respect them by paying them more appropriately. We are looking into public long-term care. We all saw what happened during the pandemic and how those for-profit homes really hurt people, significant deaths in those areas. And we are going to raise the minimum wage as well to help with affordability up to $20 an hour in our first term, starting with $16 in October and then going up $1 a year from there, which would be fair for workers and also for businesses who have to adapt to that change. One final thing we'll be doing to help with affordability is increasing ODSP. People can't live on that. It's something like $1,100 a month. So we need to increase that by 20% immediately, and then we'll be doubling that again in our second year. So disrespect and affordability are two things, and those are things we can change. That's the beauty of it, is we can make a difference in these policies so that people feel respected and feel that they can get ahead and have a place to live and be able to afford a beautiful life.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Thanks, Todd. So obviously, our community is facing many important issues in the years ahead as we exit the pandemic. So 2.5 minutes is probably not enough time to answer these issues, but I'll try. We have an aging population. StatsCan has pointed out that there's more people over 65 than there are under 14 just this year, and it's going to keep growing. So one of my priorities for the area, I believe, is long-term care facilities. We need more beds. The PC party has committed to 30,000 net new beds, 28,000 rebuilt beds as well. In 15 years under the Liberals, we had 600 new long-term care beds. 15 years. Under the PC government, we've committed to 30,000. So to me, it's been years of dragging our feet in the healthcare under successive governments. I obviously used to work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare. So this report that I'm about to mention really speaks to me because she is the CEO of St. Elizabeth. The Sharkey report. It was recommended back in the early 2000s that each long-term care patient or resident was given 4 hours of care per day. Back in the early 2000s, and the PC government is going to make that a law. So it was ignored for 15 years, and at this point it has been brought to the attention that that Sharkey report was there. It was actually CUPE that brought that forward. As for my second point, it would be housing. The PC government has put forward that we're going to build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. Seems astronomical, but last year we built 100,000 homes in Ontario. It was actually the largest amount of homes built in 1 year since the early 90s. So this problem of housing might have creeped up during the pandemic, but it's been around for decades and we haven't been focusing enough on it. But obviously it's great to want to plan for it, but we need the investment into the trades to go back to the earlier question. The growth of the region is held back because we don't have enough tradespeople. Whether it's the electrician at my store or the plumber at my store, they train somebody and most of the times they go west because they're young and they see the grass being greener on that side. So we need a partnership from all three levels of government to fix the crisis, municipal, federal, and provincial. Throwing constant dollars at it is part of the problem. It's raised the inflation on homes significantly. Obviously, we need infrastructure to be able to grow our riding. A couple of them are the wastewater treatment plant in Glen Walter and in Ingleside, and water in North Dundas. Speaking to councils throughout the area, those are extremely important for us to be able to grow the way we need to, especially since the pandemic. And the reality is the PC government has committed $1 billion over the next 5 years for those three. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milner.
The two issues most important for myself, and I won't say the most important for the Green Party, but they are important to the Green Party, is housing and the lack of units and affordability with respect and preservation of our green spaces, our green corridors. Let's not forget, this is our foundational home. This is so important for our mental health as well. So this would mean what the Green Party is putting forward is to building within urban boundaries over the next 10 years so as not to disturb our farmlands, wetlands, and natural vegetation, including preserving green spaces in our building projects so everyone is within a walking distance, spaces that support and enhance mental and physical health. I look at some of the housing developments going on in Cornwall, and honestly, I can't say anything else except sickening. And I'm sure it's not just Cornwall, it's other areas as well where they completely clear-cut a space to build a new development. That has to stop. That is just ridiculous. Phase in basic income with first step of doubling ODSP and OW rates. And why do I mention that? If you don't have the money, you cannot afford to rent a place. I mean, there is just no way. With ODSP being around the $1,100, where are you going to find a place to rent? It's just not possible. build 1.5 million homes, I think that's about on your numbers, within existing urban boundaries over the next 10 years. So we preserve our green spaces and our essential farming land. The Greens are also proposing to split the cost of operating public housing with municipalities, 50-50. Mandate inclusionary zoning and require at least 20% of units to be affordable in all projects above a certain size. Allow single-family dwellings to be converted in multiple condo units. Reinstate rent controls on all units, put in place vacancy control to limit increases between tenancies. Work to reinstate goal to end homelessness within 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I don't want to point out if there's a reference made or not, but I'm not sure if there's anybody interested in a short follow-up to anybody's answers. Ms. Gardner.
Just on the long-term care, I'm not going to get into a time machine, and I'm not defending folks that I haven't met, whether it's Wynne or McGuinty. It's always a scare tactic. Drag that in, and people will get scared off of real representation. But I will say, while sitting around the county council table, we have committed thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars, and we've actually had to hire a consultant to help us get this current government to support some of our long-term care housing.
Any further comments? Mr. Quinn.
I understand you don't want us to reference Wynne or McGuinty, but when Del Duca was a right-hand person in the Wynne government, it's a bit of a challenge to not be able to reference somebody that was an important part of that cabinet. As for long-term care facilities in this area, the Woodland Villa is about to be finished. We have Lancaster that has been announced as well. And there's been a lot of progress made on North Dundas, meeting with them up in the North Dundas riding, that it's getting close. So the PC government is there at the table. And I believe it's wrong to say that we're not.
Any further comments from the other two candidates? Seeing none, we're warming up. We'll move on now to the next round of questions who are supplied by and are supplied by the Social Development Council of Cornwall and area. In 2018, when they surveyed hundreds of vulnerable people across our region, mental health was overwhelmingly their priority in order to achieve poverty reduction. We also learned through further public engagement our rural population is underserviced in terms of mental health care. And since the COVID pandemic, we have seen dramatic increases to local youth mental illness and opioid overdoses. Can you tell us about your party's plan to implement universal mental health care and how it will impact our local issues? Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So as you know, I'm an elementary teacher, so I certainly have firsthand experience with the youth mental health crisis that we are living through. In my grade 3-4 class this year, I have 22 kids. 5 or 6 of them have been referred to our student support counselor, who is there, I think it's 2 half days per week. She's split between multiple schools. So that's just one example of, the need is there. The desire is there to actually access these services, but we don't have the ability to meet those needs. So watching kids who are struggling since COVID, anxiety is through the roof. I've never seen anything like it. Kids are shutting down. They need help with their social skills. And again, when they have to either wait for these services or when their family, wants to access them outside of the school system and they can't afford it because an hour with a therapist is something around $150 and most people cannot afford that. So one of the things the NDP is looking to do is we are going to be adding universal mental health services to OHIP so that all people across Ontario, children included, can access therapy and counseling as they need it. We will be hiring more mental health counselors and psychologists so that we can actually have those services. Right now, the wait list for children, I believe, is something like 18 months. Does that sound right? That's really high. We're looking to bring that down to a maximum of 30 days. Okay, so We also, when we're considering the opioid crisis, there's a lot of othering happening where people are viewed as addicts or they have a problem or they're not like me. But the truth is this opioid crisis is impacting so many people, so many families, people who, never planned this, never would have expected it to come. So we really need to declare this a public health emergency, invest in harm reduction strategies immediately. We know the evidence shows that through harm reduction, people have a better chance of safely using or hopefully ultimately getting off of substances. We want to fund mental health and addiction infrastructure as well and address in particular the social determinants of health. So we know that poverty is through policy choice. We don't have affordable housing for people, and often precarious housing can be more associated with addiction issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. So I've been very passionate about mental health prior to the nomination, during the nomination, and the campaign. I currently sit on the Children's Treatment Center Board of Directors, and I've been supporting it long before I joined that board. Mental health is extremely important to me, and as Wendy did mention, in the schools, there is an issue. It is something that has happened over the last 2 years. My wife, Kim, is a teacher, and I have children of my own. The anxiety that has gone up since the pandemic needs to be addressed, and we are addressing it. I'll get to that later, but at my restaurant, I have a lot of staff that have anxiety since the pandemic. Taking the masks off, because it's completely optional. Some of them struggled with that. We did not force it. We don't talk about it at the store as to why somebody wants to have a mask on or not. So mental health is playing a part in this pandemic at the later stages of it. We've all been sheltered in place in our homes for 2 years. Humans are very social. We want to get out and interact, and now it's changed. The fabric of what makes us who we are has changed. If it wasn't for the campaign, I probably wouldn't be at as many events as that I am at right now. I'm trying to be at anywhere from 5 to 10 events every weekend to try to know the riding as much as possible. It's sad that the survey you referenced, Todd, is from 2018. It's prior to the pandemic. Unfortunately, it's only gotten worse since the pandemic. You guys can piece together who was in before 2018. I don't want to be pointing fingers, but the reality is it's showing decades of neglect. Unfortunately, the pandemic has gotten in the way of some of our focus and some of our attention, and it's only going to get worse coming out of the pandemic. We're the first government in Ontario history to create a ministerial department for mental health and addictions. Ontario's been around a while, and it only just got created now. $3.8 billion is committed over the next 10 years to support the roadmap to wellness. On top of that, they've added another $204 million since Budget 2022 has come out, knowing that the pandemic has put extra pressure on that. The opioid crisis is real. Since 2019, $93 million annually has been put into the opioid crisis. Is it enough? We probably do need more coming out of the pandemic. We have all heard of people locally that have unfortunately passed away because of opioids. It is obviously a pressure point in our society, and it's something that we are looking at with billions of dollars of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milner.
Thank you. So yes, further to your comment about that, we know people who have suffered because or passed away because of the opioid crisis. We also, I'm sure, are all aware of people who have taken their own lives. And if we had good mental health services available when someone needs it where they are, I mean, some of those people could still be here. About 1 in 4 Canadians are seeking mental health supports. That's a lot. Just think, like 25% of the people in this room right now. Decades of neglect by successive governments has led to long wait times and inadequate funding and support. We, the Green Party, intend to make mental health care affordable, accessible, and comprehensive, so anyone in the province can access care when they need it. We will include mental health and addiction care under OHIP by offering services provided by psychotherapists, psychologists, social workers, and other regulated professionals. Expand access to publicly funded mental health and addiction treatment beds to reduce or eliminate the need for expensive private care. Fully integrate mental health and addiction services into expanded family health teams and walk-in clinics to improve early intervention. Include mental health and substance use as a part of a regular checkup. Invest. This is really important and makes mental health accessible to everyone, wherever they are, in a 3-digit 24/7 province-wide mental health crisis response line so callers can be diverted from 911 and connected to more appropriate service. This is not just, this is for everyone. Children, our police force, our nurses and doctors, they're all experiencing mental health issues. This is how we can help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
I don't know if I need to apologize that I didn't get into politics until last election cycle, but here's what I did do in the mental health field. So in 2007, I was a victim services responder for victim services of SDSG and A. Anyone that knows what they do when there's a crisis, when people have gone through a loss or an incredible situation, I was one of a team of responders that went 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and on call all weekend. That's what I did in 2007, and I did that for about 5 years. I've since returned and am now on the board for the victim services of SDSG and A. Prior to that, I worked with folks that were on ODSP and Ontario Works that did have addiction issues in Cornwall and the counties. I ran a class. We talked about these issues. I'm very aware, and I will say, when I ran, my participants showed up at my office looking for a sign because they know who I am when we have the mental health conversation and addiction conversation. Fast forward, I'm a mental health first aid trained instructor who has been doing that for 4 years. So my apologies for not getting into politics earlier, but I will tell you, if I'm sitting at the table, this will not be a buzzword conversation. I will be using real people that I've had conversations with and been at their worst time. I will also say, during my time at County Council, we were denied funding for the Ontario Provincial Police to have a mental health nurse there. Okay? We funded it. We weren't going to fund it, but I got a little bit hot under the collar and I changed some of my colleagues' mind and we funded it. Okay? We just received, in all fairness, a $150,000 one-time grant from the province. We have statistics that show that when that mental health nurse is with the OPP officers, the rate of them getting arrested versus going to where they get help is 40 to 60%. It's an incredible number. And to only receive a one-time grant to continue that program, I got a little hot under the collar again and we funded some more money towards it. But the point of the matter is, my apologies for not being at the political table, but I've been at this a long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's an opportunity now. I can't really say who made references to whose party, but maybe there's an opportunity for somebody maybe to speak up on this one. Or maybe not. So we'll move on to the next question. This long-standing issue of backlogs with delays in diagnosis and treatment, along with workforce burnout in our healthcare system, has been brought to the forefront by the COVID-19 pandemic. What is your party's plan to address this crisis and to ensure that our residents are receiving the standard of care that we've come to expect and deserve in Ontario? Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. First off, a large thank you to all the healthcare workers. I know it sounds cliche, but they are heroes. Nobody signed up for the last 2 years. I have some family members that work in healthcare, and I see their workload, I see their pressure, and I see the stress levels with it. Today, I went to Sandfield Place and spoke to some of the seniors and some of the employees. I met with an older lady that came out of retirement, come back and help. A commitment to healthcare. She knows that we are short-staffed, and she needed to come and put her efforts in. She said she should be retired, but she is that dedicated to our healthcare system, and all healthcare workers are very dedicated. Back in 2018, Premier Ford campaigned on ending hallway healthcare. We recognize there's a huge issue, and then the pandemic hit. Unfortunately, the term in power that the PCs have had was split in half by the pandemic, so we weren't able to achieve as many goals as we were hoping to. They're trying to fix the neglect of the 15 years of Liberal rule that our healthcare system was crumbling, and it does need that investment. We've grown the healthcare budget from $59 billion in 2019 to $64 billion last year. We've hired or plan to hire 30,000 new healthcare workers to be able to help out, but as we have all spoken in this room, there's a huge shortage, a large shortage all across Canada, not just in Ontario. We've given $1 billion more to home healthcare, and as I've implied earlier, I used to work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare in the HR department. I'm very passionate about home care. I believe most people want to stay in their homes as long as possible. So that extra $1 billion over the next 3 years is going to have an impact. That's on top of the $500 million that was already addressed for the next 3 years. Again, most seniors I've spoken to have wanted to stay in their home. By allowing them to stay in their home, it takes pressure off of our hospital system and our long-term care facilities. I'm extremely passionate. St. Elizabeth Home Care came to this area, and I was able to help hire some of the first nurses in this area. One other thing that I've heard when speaking to hospitals and nurses is that we have a lot of seniors basically living in the hospital because we don't have the capacity of our long-term care facilities. That's why we've committed to 30,000 net new beds in our long-term care facilities. It's going to have an impact. We obviously have an aging demographic, and it's extremely important that we look after our healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milner.
Okay. It's for the issue of backlogs, correct?
This is the backlog within
Yep,
our, basically
okay.
our healthcare system, what
Yep,
we hope to get out
yep.
of it.
So the Green Party wishes to partner with the federal government to implement a universal pharmacare program as an interim measure, publicly fund take-home cancer and rare disease medications. Also, support certification upgrades for healthcare workers through expanded bridging programs at publicly funded post-secondary institutions. Also, fast-track credentials approvals for 15,000 international healthcare workers, including nurses and personal support workers. Work with the federal government to provide surge funding to reduce the backlog in surgeries, imaging, and other services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gardner.
Todd. The pandemic highlighted what was going in our healthcare system, and I'm looking forward, not backwards. So the one thing we have to do is we need to pay the healthcare workers what they deserve. They are feeling fatigued. I as well have healthcare workers in my family, and I've spoken to other healthcare workers. And we are in a crisis in the sense when you look at the nursing profession, there are nurses that have only been in the profession for 6 years and they're leaving. They are not looking at it as a long-term profession because they are burnt out, they feel disrespected, they don't have the tools, and we seem to be on this constant cycle of part-time. And they want full-time. Some of them have waited years to get a full-time job, right? And we're talking about shortage, but they're not full-time, they're balancing. Some are even balancing 2 different jobs at different hospitals and that type of thing. So we need to repeal the salary cap, get out of the cycle of part-time, and we have commitments to that, and we need to invest. Beds are one thing, but you also need staffing to staff those beds. And I think I did mention earlier that part of our plan that would help us in this riding is the tuition for nurses and doctors that would commit to practicing in a rural community. We also need to, I think we've all talked about internet, telehealth, that type of thing is important. And we need to engage our other healthcare practitioners, pharmacists, nurse practitioners. There are solutions there, but we can't really do the same old, same old. And I think we need to look at it at the situation and what would work best for this area. Because again, we can go back and we're going to have the Toronto conversation, but we're not Toronto. Okay, so we need to look at our existing facilities, see what's missing. I just mentioned that closure of a walk-in medical clinic. The doctors are retiring and they deserve to retire, but we don't have anything to fill the void. I sat on a delegation to the Ministry of Health asking, pleading for a nurse practitioner clinic in South Dundas. We actually have a medical clinic that is empty. And the answer was no. So we need to get to a yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. It's called health care for a reason, and that's because it is completely reliant on people. And so when we want to have a functioning healthcare system that works for everyone and is accessible to everyone, the shortcomings that we've found through the pandemic are not about space. It's not about beds. It's about the people who can care for the people in the beds. We really need to respect our workers, and that's not what's happened. So if you look at what's happened with the nursing profession through the pandemic in particular, Bill 124, you may have heard of, was introduced, and that froze their wages. So on the one hand, we're hearing them called heroes, and on the other hand, we're freezing their wages while they work overtime, putting their life at risk every day. Something doesn't quite add up here to me. We're finding that with PSWs as well, those are the people that make our LTCs work, our long-term care systems work. Those are the people who are going to ensure that home care is actually accessible, because I do agree with you. Seniors that I've talked to, majority would prefer to stay at home and have care come to them. But without PSWs who are paid fairly, a living wage, they're not going to stay in that precarious work. So we're proposing we're going to be increasing their wages by $5 an hour and looking towards more full-time work for those folks. And again, it's disproportionately affecting women. We need to recruit more family doctors, clearly. There are so many people in this province who don't have that primary care. Nurse practitioners are another excellent way to do that. And we need these the community health centers, the community health teams, where we have that multidisciplinary approach to care to help people. The NDP is going to hire 30,000 nurses. We're going to immediately repeal Bill 124. And as far as the nursing shortage goes, there are at least 15,000 internationally educated nurses who we can tap into if we can just get them the accreditation, sorry, that word's tricky, so that they can actually practice here. And it's not taking jobs away from anyone. There's a need, and if we can get these people into the workforce, that's going to be a huge help to get things moving. We're going to hire 10,000 PSWs and pay them a living wage. And it's not, as I said, it's not about furniture, it's about the care. We need the people, they need to be respected, and they need to be supported so that they can keep doing their jobs.
Thank you very much. Any further comments in regards to this question?
I'd like to add one more.
Ms. Stevens.
Sorry. As well, we've seen that privatization piece coming out. So if you've seen those blue health coalition signs that say keep our healthcare public, that's what we're talking about. Instead of government dollars being invested into shareholders, we need those dollars to go directly to care of patients and people.
Thank you. Any further comment on that? Rebuttal. Fair enough. Move on now to the next question. It's no secret we are experiencing an affordability crisis, more specifically within our housing market. ODSP and OW rates have not caught up with this emergency and skyrocketing cost of living. This has been a significant increase on our residents as well as the residents of Ontario. creating a lot of unhoused individuals, individuals precariously left in areas which we choose not to reflect on. What's your party's platform to remedy this situation, and how will you pay for it? Ms. Milner.
The Green Party proposes to phase in basic income, which I have mentioned before, with the first step of doubling ODSP and OW rates. Our proposal is to take $20 billion over 10 years that is currently going towards subsidizing electricity use, plus $3.5 billion in revenue from the additional speculation taxes, and use it to build the homes people need and to retrofit existing buildings for public health, accessibility, and energy efficiency upgrades that will result in permanent savings on utility bills. The Green Housing Plan is about making strategic investments to build affordable housing now. Investment that will house people, create jobs, and help to tackle the climate and housing crisis in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. It's definitely a crisis. And one of the things that I fear that's not being captured are the folks that are actually couch surfing, going house to house to house. We're coming up where it's nice outside. There are areas of our riding where tent cities will soon come up, and you will see them, and folks will gather and they will have to take advantage of the warm weather. And I know what they do in the cold weather, but we need solutions now. So part of our platform is the encouragement of empty buildings. If you drive around any part of the riding, you will see buildings that could be turned into houses. And it's such a shame that they're just left to rot or they're left to whatever. We need to work with our municipal partners, as I mentioned previously, and make it easier for those houses to be turned, those buildings to be turned into houses. We need to do that. We're talking about a 20% increase in ODSP over 2 years. That's a start. It's not a great start, but it's still a start. $1,000 pension top-up for seniors. We often hear that. The pension has not increased. Talking about a $1,000 pension top-up. I was really excited about the living wage pilot project that was canceled. I think we need to get back to that. I think the pandemic showed that we need to do that and have that equity conversation, and have that be brought in. So when we talk about increasing the minimum wage, it's not just about that. It's also about transitioning into a living wage. Because I think that minimum wage is not reflective anymore of what our society needs.
Thank you. Ms. Stephen?
Thank you. So we know that wealth equals health. It's well established. And as part of the NDP, we believe that housing is a human right. We know it's one of the social determinants of health. We've already talked about that this evening. The charity model that we live with right now is really based on that wealth disparity, where we have those who have more who give unto those who have less when they feel like it. And what I'd really like to see is that we're living in a society where we are funding our most vulnerable people, and that includes the people who are on ODSP. We know that disability is not a choice. No one is choosing to not work and be on ODSP. So it's really important that we support those vulnerable people. And to be true, differences are beautiful and should be celebrated. That's certainly what we teach in schools now. And I truly believe it as an adult as well. So in order to solve this housing crisis, the NDP is going to be working closely with municipalities. As I said earlier, we will be paying our fair share to release funds that the municipalities can then use for other things. We are going to be building 100,000 new affordable homes that are rent geared to income, build 150,000 non-market homes charging below market rent. We're going to repair 260,000 social housing units and build 60,000 new supportive housing units. I've already mentioned the increase to ODSP, which would be 20% immediately and then double that in our second year. We will bring back real rent control. I talked to someone over on 2nd Street East who said his landlord was trying to hike the rent by $600 just out of nowhere, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen, but there are loopholes there that need to be closed to protect renters. I agree the basic income pilot project was prematurely canceled. That should come back for sure. And as I already mentioned too, NDP is going to increase minimum wage to $20 an hour over our first term. We have a costed platform as well. And the way that we'll pay for this is through two methods. So number one is that redistribution of funds that already exist. So by canceling the 413 highway proposed to be built in Toronto, that's $10 billion that can be redistributed in other ways. And also, as I mentioned before, canceling EQAO, that's $30 million that can be used for other things. Finally, closing those loopholes for the millionaires and those really wealthy corporations. They are often donors to the other two parties, the two big parties, and so that's why no one's taken them on to this point. But they need to be held accountable. It's not right that we have this huge inequity, that we have people who have so much and people who have so little. I don't know how we have become okay with this as a society, especially seeing the number of people at the bottom. You look at the way that our society has been structured, the people at the top with the power and the money are keeping the others down. That's how it persists. We need to bind together and actually vote for something different.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. Housing affordability is obviously a huge crisis that was further highlighted by the pandemic. This just didn't come out of nowhere, as I implied earlier. It's been decades in the making. It comes down to, we can all talk about solving the housing crisis, but unless we have people to actually build those homes, we're not going to get anywhere. We need to invest, to go back to our earlier questions about the trades. We really need to have the foundation working, people able to build the homes and people that are out there building the homes. Right now, we can throw lots of numbers around and say we're going to solve the problem, but until we have enough tradespeople to build these homes, we're going to be in an affordability crisis. As I mentioned earlier, our plan is to build 1.5 million homes. It seems like a large number, but last year we built 100,000. So it's bringing it up to 150,000, being able to get that done. As I mentioned earlier, it's the most homes we've built in Ontario since the 1990s. So we're on the right track, but it's going to take a few more years to be able to get us there. It's going to take more trained bodies to be able to allow this to happen. Those on Ontario Works and ODSB are disproportionately affected by the housing crunch. We all know that. ODSB rates, our party has committed to rising them by 5% when we are elected. After that, we are the only party that's going to index it to inflation. We've had inflationary years that are rather high, and over the last 20 years, ODSB has only gone up 1%, maybe 2%. If inflation stays on the path that it is, indexing it to inflation like we have done with minimum wage will help. I believe in the solution to the housing crisis is obviously getting people working, getting people trained, and reducing the red tape that we have been doing in the party. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments to the question? Ms. Stephen.
I think that the Conservative government's increase of ODSP by 5% is shameful. I think that we can do so much better than that, and that people with disabilities deserve so much more than that. That's just disrespectful.
Further comments?
It's an increase that we haven't seen in decades. So at least we are putting an increase there. We're putting it in place for decades that 1 or 2% wasn't even keeping up with inflation. So we're understanding the need and we're working towards a solution for that, indexing it to inflation.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you very much. We'll go to the final question presented this evening by the Social Development Council. As you know, Akwesasne is located in both the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, which creates challenges in delivering and accessing adequate services for Akwesasne residents. For example, when Mohawk Council of Akwesasne recruits medical professionals, such as occupational therapists and child psychologists, they must hire 2 in each in order to serve Quebec residents as well as Ontario residents and be certified. This doubles their costs and creates unnecessary barriers. how would you advocate for Akwesasne residents to have access to all services offered to us as all in here in Ontario? Ms. Gardner.
Thanks, Todd. Several of us have had the opportunity to meet with the Grand Chief and chiefs in Akwesasne. I discussed this whenever I was there. It is a complex issue. The one thing that I would like to see changed about representation in this area is instead of the information coming from Toronto down to our area, and that includes Akwesasne, I'd like to see us empower these groups to be at the table. And that was actually the commitment I made to the chiefs that I met with, was the fact that I'm not going to tell them what their community needs, but they will always be invited to the table, and they will decide if that's something that they need to do. We need to have an MPP that's sitting at the table with our community instead of across the table dictating how this stuff goes. So empowering and advocacy are two things that I've built my professional career on, my volunteer career on, and that would continue with these discussions.
Thank you. Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So maybe you're like me and you've been doing a lot of unlearning recently of the whitewashed history that we have been fed. I've been learning about how colonialism and systemic racism have real impacts daily on Indigenous peoples. There's inequity, again, in the healthcare, as brought out in this question, and education, certainly. And if we take a look at the unmarked graves of Indigenous children that were discovered at former Canadian residential schools, I mean, this has opened our eyes to the genocide that's being committed against Indigenous peoples. And here we are making things harder again. What is going on? If we're looking at real truth and reconciliation, our efforts are completely off the rails, and we've got a long way to go to get back on track. When governments and First Nations peoples meet together at the same time, nation to nation, as Kirsten already said, we can solve these problems. The problem is that when someone doesn't show up to the table, for example, the provincial government, how are we going to actually make these systems work for the people? We're trying to bend the people to fit the system, and that doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. So with these systemic problems, that's why I'm here too, is because I see how broken the systems are. It's absolutely ridiculous that you need two separate specialists when one could clearly work if we could negotiate with Quebec, with the Grand Chief, with the people who are the stakeholders in this. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to any First Nation. All of those communities are very different. And each nation is unique, and we need to be respectful of that. The NDP, and I myself, I'm still learning and unlearning, but we're truly committed to actual truth and reconciliation. All of our policies and all of our platform points that are connected with Indigenous peoples involve having them at the table, not us telling people what they need, them telling us and having an actual conversation. Truth and reconciliation is more than just ceremonies and symbolic gestures. We actually have to walk the walk and make that difference for these folks, with these folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Todd. So as Kirsten did mention, there's a few of us that did meet with Akwesasne, the councils, and some of the chiefs. In my conversations with them at the Turtle Dome, it was very clear that Ontario has taken a lead on funding for healthcare for Akwesasne. Not to quote Chief Benedict, but he mentioned that Quebec needs to step up, not Ontario. The majority of the funding is coming from our province. Knowing that Ontario respects the relationship more than Quebec, our counterparts, we need to pressure the Quebec representatives to step up, do their fair share. We have imaginary borders for our friends and neighbors that does not help the ultimate goal of supporting the healthy community. Just because they live on the Quebec side doesn't mean they shouldn't get the same care that they get on the Ontario side. We need to get it done, and if need be, we'll provide the funding, or I would like to think we can provide the funding required to bridge the gap if Quebec isn't going to do that. It's completely disproportionately Ontario funding the majority of the healthcare on Akwesasne. Knowing that we're already providing the majority of the healthcare, I believe it's a small bridge to be able to bridge. And knowing that our Quebec counterparts aren't there, we just need to provide pressure on them. And if they're not going to do it, I don't believe we should be hiring two sets of the same healthcare workers because of where they live on Akwesasne. I think there is an efficiency that can happen from that and a synergy by just allowing them to get the affordable healthcare that they need. We can't overlook it, and just because Quebec isn't doing their part doesn't mean that we shouldn't step up even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milner.
I find this whole situation preposterous, that they would have to hire a professional, a child psychologist, or an occupational therapist, one from each province, to be able to service, to provide care to the small community. It would be nice for the two provinces to discuss and rectify this challenge for Akwesasne Council and the Akwesasne residents. I mean, this is, that needs to happen. I did do a little search online to figure, well, why isn't it possible for a professional in Quebec to be able to service somebody, provide service to someone on the Ontario side, and it's licensing. So, I mean, it is possible, but there's some additional licensing involved. So let's get that done, the additional licensing. Also, I have come to understand since last June that, for example, a professional in Quebec can provide service out of province as long as it's virtually. Now, that's probably not the best case scenario. However, that is a possibility, something to consider. The provinces, they need to deal with this, and I don't know what the answer is. I just know that should I become MPP, I will certainly do whatever I can to ensure that Akwesasne doesn't have to hire two different professionals to be able to service the whole of their community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments in regards to this question? Ms. Stephen.
This feels like jurisdictional ping pong, which is what we've seen, for a really long time between federal and provincial. This time it's provincial and provincial, right? With respect to clean drinking water for First Nations peoples. So again, the NDP, we're finally going to be cleaning up Grassy Narrows. Enough is enough. It's got to happen.
Thank you very much. Anything further? Ms. Milner.
Our neighbors deserve more. Period.
Thank you. And again, to our candidates, thank you for answering all 8 questions, and again, for the respect shown to each other throughout the process, as much as I tried. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we have some time for questions from the audience, and there is a mic being brought up as we speak. When you do come up to the mic, please introduce yourself and also identifying the candidate that you're giving your question to. If I do deem the question to be disrespectful, I will shut it down. It will not make it to the candidates. So in all fairness, please, again, pick one candidate, direct your question to the candidate, and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Jaworski. I'm Deputy Mayor of South Glengarry, but I'm asking this question as a local schools advocate, not on behalf of the township. So my question has to do with, I'm addressing my question to Nolan Quinn. So my question has to do with school board governance, and I want to be clear that this is an issue, a province-wide issue. It's not SDG specific. So just to give context, school boards have lost a lot of the power that they used to have here in Ontario. They don't set tax rates, they don't collect taxes, they don't set the curriculum, they don't negotiate contracts, the list goes on. And so that begs the question, is it perhaps now time to change the structure of school boards or how they operate? There is a lack of transparency and accountability with how school boards operate. We see numerous school boards making many decisions in closed session. We see the code of conduct rules being used against one trustee or another, being barred from meetings, and the reason behind
Your
it.
question,
never,
please.
Sorry, never being given to the public. So my question to you is, will you support local pilot projects of alternate decision-making models that put local decision-making with respect to public education back into our local communities?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. For one, I need to gather more information on that. There's a lot of experts, and I don't pretend to be one, whether it's healthcare or education. You need to lean into the people that know it better than myself. I believe that the system can be adapted and changed. It's a very outdated system. And I understand what you're talking about the closed session. I was able to see that video as well. And, calling of order of people speaking out their beliefs in that regard. And to me, the only way we're going to improve the system is speaking about it and debating it. And when the debate is taken away, I think that's a bit of a challenge. But again, I would commit to learning more on the file and understanding that it does need some tweaking.
I'm Ruby Mecker from Finch, and my question is to Nolan as well. The people and businesses of Ontario know the importance of clean water, and they're also well aware of the cost of power. The nationwide wind turbines have not run now for more than 4 days. People, including myself, are feeling much better, both mentally and physically. I have 2 questions. If elected, what would you do? Number 1, of what benefit are the turbines in supplying reliable power to Ontario's grid? Number 2, if elected, what will you do to protect the clean water aquifers of Ontario, and in particular, the highly vulnerable aquifer on which the Nation Rise project is built? Please include health protection for the people as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. So obviously, I think you're well versed in it. You understand that those contracts were signed before 2018. So that is something.
Excuse me. The candidate speaking. You've had your chance. Thank you.
And I do know the New Blue platform is that by removing them, they'll be able to grow the GDP by 5%. From what I understand, and obviously I need to be a bit more versed in it, it would cost $30 billion to remove the windmills that we currently have in the province. So to make electricity more affordable by removing them, there's going to be some big fines in that regard. As for the health and mental health, I have seen some documents that you have shared about what Dr. Paul has spoken in on that one. And again, I'm going to trust the experts. I don't pretend to be a medical expert. And from what I understand, he believes it's more of a nuisance than it is a health regard.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi. I'm going to take this. Okay. Hi. So my name is Aliane Garaway, and my question is for seniors. So I'm going to tell you a very short story to get to my question. My mom was in a hospital.
Who's your question for, though?
Oh, geez, anybody, but I'll go with Wendy.
All right,
Get somebody different here. So basically, my mom was in a hospital for 6 months. And because of her income, I was able, after being in a hospital, to get her into a long-term care home. Lost her 3 weeks ago, unfortunately. However, 2 PSW for 32 women to take care of them makes absolutely no sense. I agree on whatever you guys were saying. Now to my question is about my father. My father worked all his life. Right now, he's got dementia, 93 years old, living alone. I cannot take him to our home. We'd have to sell our house and buy another house that we can't afford right now to be able to take care of my father. Now the question is how do we subsidize? Because you said earlier that, yes, we're building a lot of houses, we're building a lot of nursing homes, we're building a lot of beds, we've got this, we've got that. My father, when I asked for it to be subsidized, makes $5 a month, too much to be subsidized. However, we can get a room, not a problem. However, we need to put $700 a month to get that room. What are you guys planning on doing on helping these seniors be able to live? Because when they're in between the cracks, 93-year-old dementia gentleman living alone because I cannot put him anywhere. Can't afford it.
Ms. Stephen.
Wow. You've been through a lot. I'm sorry for your loss of your mother. That's a really complex situation, isn't it? So I think from what I'm understanding from you, you're telling me that you want to get your father into care, but the price is prohibitive. Is that my understanding? Okay, so he is home currently because we cannot get him into care that is appropriate. Exactly. Okay, I hear you. So certainly we need to continue looking at these public and nonprofit municipally run long-term care homes. That's the safest and most viable way where any invested dollars are going directly into care. Nothing's being skimmed off for shareholders. As far as, so wait list, I assume, is a problem as well, right?
1 year in a waiting list, can't get in.
Wow. Yeah, that comes down to, I mean, it's access and it's funds, right? So I wish I could give you an answer and say, yes, we could move him somewhere immediately. But your story is exactly the kind of reason that we need to be investing in public health care, because there are too many people just like your dad. I met a woman recently who came home from hospital. Home care didn't step in for 2 days. She went into a diabetic coma. So we are having seniors falling through the cracks, particularly the ones who are alone. And, you know, as their children, as adults, we are working, we are raising our own children. Something's got to give here, and people are hurting. So I am sorry, and I thank you for your question, but I think, you know, public services, we need to do better.
Thank you for the question, and sorry for your loss. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm an advocate for, hi. And I volunteer on a lot of committees fighting for better mental health services.
Megan, you don't mind telling us who the question's for, please?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's for everyone.
Well, you're going to have to pick one this
Oh,
evening.
okay.
Only because all those people behind you want to ask a question, too.
Okay, let's
you.
go with Nolan Quinn. According to a study done by Elizabeth Fry Society in 2018, 80% of incarcerated women are sitting in jail for poverty-related crimes. 2/3 of incarcerated women are mothers, 70% are single mothers. Poverty-related crimes have been referred to as crimes of desperation or crimes of survival, wherein women justify criminal activity as an alternative to hunger or homelessness for themselves and for their children. The cost of incarceration, the average cost is $116,000 a year. And that's just to house the mother, not to mention the children that have to either go into foster care, probably being supported by that system. ODSP has an annual income of $14,000 for a single person, and Ontario Works is $8,800. Speaking to our local office here in Cornwall, 90% of people on Ontario Works can't find work due to criminal records. So I'm just wondering how you plan to lift these single moms and vulnerable people out of poverty, because it's clearly going to cost far less to make sure that all of our vulnerable people are taken care of, who aren't able to work full-time,
So
be
I
supported
appreciate
outside
that,
of the
and
justice.
I think the candidate may have the gist of it now. So, Mr.
Okay.
Quinn.
Yes, so obviously it's a travesty. I understand with what you're mentioning that a lot of them are incarcerated. Again, I think it's sad that that report is coming from 2018. It probably hasn't improved since then in that regard. And I know we do have the Baldwin House in Cornwall, and it's such a great asset to our community. You know, it's a multifaceted question I think that you've asked. As for the poverty, you know, raising our ODSP rates is crucial, I think, moving forward. But getting people more working, you know, into full-time jobs with benefits in that regard. You know, the casual workforce is a challenge to be able to survive on. I've heard that in any industry that, you know, part-time work is a bit of a challenge to be able to make ends meet in that regard. So, you know, I think getting more people working full-time is probably the quick answer I can give you on that one. But, you know,
we're talking disabled people and
Yeah.
you know, then people who've been incarcerated for these survival crimes who aren't able to get jobs because they have criminal records. And there's practically, especially in our community, a zero tolerance policy. And so in those situations, how do we get
Okay,
them?
so again, it's a double-faceted question. You're saying disabled, but also ones that have been incarcerated. So if they've been incarcerated, I believe there are jobs out there, or there is a chance to be able to, as long as employers are willing to take a chance. I have in the past, but it varies case by case. Obviously, when it comes to the disability, that's a whole other set of questions. And I believe that's where rising our ODSP in Ontario Works does help.
So what we'll do is while you're there, I've just been told by our organizers, we do have a little bit of time on our hands this evening. So if another candidate wants to answer that question in a minute or less, by all means. Ms. Milner.
This is ridiculous. I can't believe that anyone would have to go to jail because they've stolen something to feed their children. So then we're going to pay over $100,000 to send somebody to jail instead of doubling their ODSP. Come on.
Absolutely.
This is not rocket science. Something needs to be done to address this. Simple as that.
Ms. Gardner.
I mean, I hear you, and I hear the frustration. I was a single mom. I wasn't incarcerated, but I was a single mom, and I understand the challenges of a one-parent household. My 26-year-old son's here tonight, actually. I think that we need to get back to dignity and respect. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Some of this stuff should not be political in nature. Every party should want our most vulnerable to be taken care of.
In closing, Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing at the core of your issue is poverty, yes? So when we look at poverty, what we've been doing traditionally in our systems of government is we've been, pulling people out of the river and drying them off and then sending them off again. And then more people are falling in the river. So we're picking them up and we're helping them. And we're saying it's okay. And then we've got our charities who are also helping them. We need to stop people from falling in the river. We need to actually lift people up out of poverty by funding public services, by having reasonable wages, like raised minimum wage. Benefits that come with employment are, they are favored by high income people, people with higher education, and we know that there are patterns here, and we need to break this cycle of poverty. That's what's at the root of all of this, is lifting people up and protecting our vulnerable citizens.
I completely agree.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Next question, please. Direct who you want to start off with, and we'll see if anybody else wants to.
Yes, I'll direct my question to Kirsten Gardner. My name is John Towndrow, and I'm part of a local group focusing on sustainability of local municipalities. And my question relates to sustainability. Cornwall is among many communities that have declared a climate emergency because of its impact on the environment and local budgets and on the health and safety of its citizens. If elected, what specific actions would you take to ensure communities like Cornwall are able to meet their goals associated with the climate crisis?
Thank you for the question. Having sat at a municipal council for the last term of council, the last almost 4 years, I can tell you that the download of services and responsibilities from the province to the municipalities has been absolutely overwhelming. So one thing I would do is champion for our municipal partners. You can't have the province and the municipality be separate. They actually are partners that have to work together. And the municipalities will be able to focus on those things when they're not, hands are not tied by the provincial download.
Thank you. Any further comments from the candidates? Seeing none, thank you. Next question, please.
I'm short. I'm Tom Bate. I have been a Cornwall resident for 47 years. My question is to Ms. Gardner, because you raised it in your introductory statement. How, not only how we would like to, but how will you improve the healthcare system when Canada and Ontario has half the number of nurses, physicians, and hospital beds per population compared to all European countries, Russia, China, etc., when the nurse's salary, average salary, is the second highest in the world, and when physicians and nurses and so on cannot get licensed. We have 17,000 physicians. A medical school is opening in Brantford, but how will you double the 17,000 physicians to reach world standards when we belong to the 1% of the population for the last 50 years with North Korea, Cuba, and Canada. 1% of the population that prohibit private health care compared to Germany, Sweden, Holland, every other country. Give us specifics. How will you do it? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I could sit here and talk about the large investments. The reality is, I believe that the healthcare system needs to be tackled one doctor, one nurse at a time. And I know that sounds like it's falling short, but what governments tend to do is make these big promises. We're going to have, large investment, of which our platform does include. But to be honest with you, it's one doctor, one nurse practitioner, one nurse, one PSW, one administrative professional in the system. That's not long enough to answer that question, by the way. And it's building and funding and opening up doctor spaces at medical school, at nursing school. It's paying their tuition to encourage folks to get into the thing, and then supporting them when they're there. We can't do this two-way street where we get them there, but then they leave because they're not supported. So we have to keep the medical professionals that we have and then add more. Sorry, not long enough.
No, thank you very much. Further comments?
I'll just mention
Mr.
on
Quinn.
that. You know,
Mr.
I
Quinn.
think you implied it, having foreign trained credentials accepted here in Canada. I think that's extremely important. I have a relative that's over in Ireland right now because there's not enough medical positions or spaces in Canada for her to be trained. So she went over there, and she's probably not going to come back to Canada. And working for St. Elizabeth Healthcare, I think one of the biggest things that I realized being in the human resource department was that we had many people that had doctorates, PhDs, and they were working as PSWs because we wouldn't give them the credentials that they have in foreign countries.
Further comments from the candidates? Seeing none, and thank you, Dr. Bates, and thank you for your service to all of us. Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Kelly Bergeron. I coach kids how to code in the U.S., so I am an educator, but mostly for U.S. students. So you can imagine the past week's been very sad. But anyway, with respect to climate change, Nolan, I lived in Toronto for almost 10 years. I love Toronto, but I don't understand how we're building highways right now in the middle of a climate crisis. Inducing demand only induces it. It doesn't pull back. And I know that Mr. Ford was talking about how people are sitting in traffic, but that the math does not add up. We're investing all this money into a highway in Toronto when we just had a massive storm in Ottawa. Where's the government? What are they going to do to ensure that we're addressing this and that they actually understand the science? Because I'm just not seeing it, and it's kind of making a lot of kids feel hopeless right now.
Well, thank you, because coding is extremely important. My children are already more tech advanced than I am.
Yay.
As for the highway, I know that the Ford government has invested more into our public transit system in Toronto my whole lifetime. So I think it's a fine balance between the two of them. I used to live in Toronto a little bit as well. When I travel to Toronto, I have a sigh because I know I'm about to hit that wall of traffic and I'm going to idle. Idling is not good for the environment as well. So to have things move more efficiently through the city, I think is important for the whole province because our supply chain is very bottlenecked. Every business I've spoken to, whether it's agriculture, retail, restaurants, construction, they're struggling to get the supply to their door. So I know it is being seen as controversial, but on the flip side, putting that much money into public transit is going a long way. Just see the investment that they're doing in the Toronto area is getting people out of cars as well, but it's a fine line. The 401 is a parking lot. The DVP is a parking lot. And it's known that all people in Toronto know that as well. So investing into the EV technologies in Ontario and making us a world champion when it comes to electric vehicles, I think is extremely important, and we've been showing that.
And don't forget to invest in e-bikes as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of canceling that highway. Again, it's something that will benefit Toronto. That investment on our platform would be put into education. We've talked about the need for skilled workers. We've talked about the apprenticeship program. We've talked about all that, but that needs funding. And when we talk about something benefiting Toronto and the Toronto commuters, and yes, I do understand the contribution of vehicles to the environment. But that $10 billion in our education, when we've just had the conversation we've had, what would you rather have? Education or a highway that most of us in this room may travel once or twice?
Ms. Stephen.
Thanks. I'd just like to add as well, active transit is something that I think has been overlooked. We really need protected bike lanes. So again, provincial government working with municipalities to try and fill that need so that we can get, all of the extended benefits that come with physical activity. And I certainly don't need to tell you, the health benefits, the mental health benefits, and that would, be another great way to get people off the highways.
Thank you. Ms. Milner?
Yes, because you brought up the protected bike lanes, I know there's a lot of people here in Cornwall who would like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Nick Seabrook. My question is for Wendy Stephen. Wendy, during the pandemic, the Ontario Health Coalition conducted a survey of long-term care homes. Of the ones who responded and provided data, 75% said they were providing less than the recommended minimum of 3 hours of care per day per resident. If elected, how would your party change that status quo?
Thanks for asking, Nick. So we would be introducing a minimum, not average, but minimum of 4 hours of care per day directly per patient or per resident. Through hiring, as I mentioned before, 30,000 nurses that we need, through repealing Bill 124 so people feel respected and able to continue working, through bringing in 10,000 PSWs, and again, respecting them, paying them fair wage, $5 an hour higher, and giving them that full-time work. So again, at the core of long-term care is the people that run it, right? And so we really need to have more staff who are able to provide that minimum 4 hours per resident. Thank you.
Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Nick. So I've already mentioned it before, but the Sharkey Report's been around since about 2005. It was a recommendation way back then to bring us up to 4 hours, and the Ford PC government will bring that into law.
Further comments? Ms. Milner?
Yes, I'd just like to mention too, for the long-term care facilities, it's really important for these workers to also be able to have full-time contracts. This would eliminate some of the issues that we had during the pandemic with a lot of part-time workers. Thank you.
Ms. Gardner?
Thanks. It's about investment. Our platform actually is fairly similar to the NDP platform. We do fully cost those. So it's one thing to make promises, but you need to know how we're going to pay for it. So I would encourage you to look at the platforms and see. I've spoken to PSWs. They feel very disrespected. So there needs to be an investment, but there also needs to be a culture change on how we speak to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Good evening. My name is Kelsey Catherine Young. This is Josephine Young. The question's for her on her behalf. And I'm going to start with Kirsten, but I'm hoping everyone will answer. I would really love to be able to hear what your specific plan is as a representative or would-be representative of this region when it comes to childcare. In particular, because I've read all your platforms. I know I'm very well informed. I know what's happening. I also know how cutthroat it is to get into a daycare right now. And as someone who is raising the 5th generation that's lived in this region, I'm really sick of being represented by people that really care about what's happening in Toronto. I want to know what's happening here. I want to know what your plan is so that my daughter has care that's safe and affordable for my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner?
Well, we wouldn't have dragged our heels on the $10 a day daycare. I have a 9-year-old daughter. My husband and I, at the time when she was young, we needed daycare, and we needed it to be safe. You don't want to be at work worrying about what's happening to your daughter. So our commitment is, first off, topping up the 18-month leave so you can stay home with your baby longer. I think that is ideal if that's what you want to do. And we're going to make childcare retroactive because parents shouldn't have had to wait for as long as they did on the daycare. And we're also talking about before and after school, because it's not just babies. If you have a job that is not done at 3:30, you're going to need before and after, so there's an investment. And we're talking about 30,000 new jobs for ECEs. There needs to be stable, and I think from an educational perspective, I think there's spaces in schools that need to be used for daycare. I think starting that daycare connection to a school that's a community hub is essential. So we need more of that as well.
Further comments? Ms. Stephen.
Thank you. Your baby's really cute. I don't want to squeeze it. So as far as childcare goes, I hear you. Wait lists are out of control. I've met a lot of moms who say they can't go back to work because they can't get their child into care. The $10 a day deal that the federal government offered us months ago was sat on until just before the election. So one of the NDP goals would be to get that implemented faster. Also, we would be looking at adding more spaces in licensed facilities as well as home daycares and paying, again, I keep coming back to this, we need to invest in people. So paying ECEs that $25 an hour base salary and other daycare workers $20 an hour. Because if we aren't paying them appropriately and they can't make a living off of this, why are they going to choose to do it? And it's too important to ignore.
Further comments? Mr. Quay.
Thanks for the question, Kelsey. I appreciate that you actually know everyone's platforms. Sometimes people will just pigeonhole them into one side. So as for the $10 a day daycare, we've heard that we've dragged our feet or we sat on it. Ontario did get that 5th year agreement with the federal government, and some other provinces have circled back to try to get a better deal for themselves on that one. So sometimes I believe, sticking to your guns in that regard will get us the best deal possible. Having that 5th year is crucial. As for the lack of ECEs, we have a college in town, and I believe they obviously do train here with the ECEs, and I think it's important to keep expanding that because you are correct. It is very difficult to find daycare. You almost have to, in Toronto where my brother lives, not to talk about Toronto, but he had to put his children, they had a help that they were sharing with another family. So it was a full-time position that they would bounce back between the houses because there's no places available. Same thing in Ottawa.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you for the question. Next question, please.
Hi. Let me just move this a little bit. Michelle Allenot. I'm a lawyer, local business owner, and I've lived here since I was 5 years old. I don't need everyone to answer this question because I know the PC party's been pretty clear on their position on public health. I haven't seen anyone talk about that tonight. I did come late, so it may have been before I arrived. My question's for Kirsten. The PC platform is that we would have all of our health units narrowed down to 10 health units, so we would probably be serviced by a health unit in Ottawa. We saw in the pandemic how important public health is, and not just for giving vaccines. As a mother, I've benefited from the public health services since my kids were newborns. So what will you do to ensure that we maintain our public health unit in Cornwall and the local satellite ones as well?
Yeah, I'm appointed to the health unit. I don't know if you do that, but as my role as county councillor, and I can tell you prior to the pandemic, when we're sitting around and being told that the potential is great, that we're going to be connected to Ottawa and basically sucked into Ottawa and not have any of our local concerns addressed. I mean, yes, Ottawa is closer to Toronto, but we need a health unit, especially when we talk about poverty in our area. The health unit isn't just vaccines, it's so much more. It's dental care, it's eye care, it's senior care. There's so many things. So I was prepared to fight before then. We had the pandemic and it was highlighted how important they are. So thank you, pandemic, I guess. But I would fight to make sure that we have the health care in our riding maintained.
Further comments?
I agree.
Ms. Milner?
I agree.
Ms. Stevens.
Fight to keep it.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going from 35 health units down to
10.
10, is that right?
And I forgot to mention, full disclosure, my spouse does work for the health unit, but not on the front lines. He's in IT.
Yeah.
But I've seen the back end of it.
Yeah, I think that we've seen, again, the discussion tonight has been about the local approach. And I completely agree with Kirsten. I think that if it's possible, which I believe it still is, to reverse this, then that should be done. We need to have these public health units regionally specific and knowing their communities really, really well.
Further comments? We go around once.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's
Next
okay.
question, please.
Hello, my name's Ruth. My question is for Mr. Quinn. It's regarding housing. You spoke a lot this evening about building more homes. So my question is, would you support building small homes and tiny homes? And is that a feasible project for our riding?
Short answer, yes, I would. I know in outlying ridings they have been doing it, and in the East Coast they have been doing it. It's something I've been following. I'm a very environmental person, as much as I'm not for the Green Party. We compost everything at the restaurant, and I believe footprint is key in that regard. And these small homes, I think there was a discussion with the Legion about possibly wanting to start those up that I heard through the grapevine, that they were really, a gentleman that is at the Legion wanted to start pushing that forward because, you know, if you can't afford a rather large home, this is a way of affordability. So yes.
Any further comments, candidates?
I would love to see that. I would support it. I'd go out and help you build them.
I wouldn't do that because I'm not great with a drill, but I'm definitely behind that.
I'm actually a precision instrument repair mechanic. So yeah, that's right up my alley.
All right, ladies, in the end, do you have anything to offer to the contribution of the building?
Yeah, sure. I mean, pilot projects like that, when community members want something, that's what we're here for, right? That's what this position, this job interview tonight is about, is, you know, our community wants something and having full advocacy to get it done.
Ms. Stephen, in closing.
I would just add that creative problem solving like tiny homes is a great way to think outside the box and look at housing in a new way.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more questions before we go into closing statements.
Yes, my name is Derek Baker. I'm from Diversity, Cornwall, specifically the trans community. I'm a trans man of 20 years. I consider myself a success in this area. Of all of the four parties represented here tonight, it is the Conservative Party, the PCs, who have not come out in this riding on their position concerning the LGBTQ people. I want to know your position, Mr. Quinn.
Yes.
And for us to move forward in human civil rights, from Selma to Stonewall, from Oka to Ottawa, we will survive.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking loudly as well. I'm in full support. I've helped with some of the charity work in town in that regard. So personally, I'm 100% committed to the LGBTQ population that is in this area.
Candidates? Ms. Gardner.
Yeah, thank you. Fully supportive. In my role as deputy mayor last week, actually, I met with a group of high school students that want to put a rainbow walk near their school. We have a lot of work to do as far as acceptance, equity, the whole thing, because I sat in a room full of students that were worried that their artwork would be vandalized. And we had to have real conversations about cameras and all that thing, and that should not be happening. So there's work to be done, and I not only support it, but I'd be prepared to roll up my sleeves and do some work.
Ms. Stephen.
Thank you for sharing your story with us, Derek. Transitioning, I know not from personal experience, but from talking with trans folks such as yourself, can be really empowering, really emotional, and really difficult as well. And one of the things that I know the NDP is going to do is we're going to ensure necessary medications are available to everyone who needs them for transitioning. And that includes the coverage of all transition drugs and medications. which again, I know doesn't really serve you right now. But I'm hoping that, looking at the younger generation coming up, hopefully we can make this a less painful process, something that's more inclusive, more loving, more caring, and more respectful and dignified.
Last question.
Yes, I'm a citizen of Cornwall. I've been here for 19 years. I've been in and out of, how would I say that, emergency beds, but then you only have a period of time to get out, and there's a lot of homeless that I see around Cornwall. What is their approach to fix that problem, the major problem?
I think we'll go right across the table here. Ms. Gardner.
Oh, okay. Well, I've spoke rather passionately about housing, and I did have a question. I mean, we've got so many organizations looking at housing. The emergency housing, though, because as you know, giving a deadline, saying, just wait for a month or two, something will happen, that's not good enough. And one thing I think I would fight for, actually I know I would fight for, and it's one of the reasons why I support the Liberal platform, is bringing back that dignity. So you should not have to worry about where you're going to sleep at night.
Ms. Milner.
Yes, I mean, we all deserve a home. The Green Party has certainly mentioned that they would support 50% of community housing, partnering with the municipality. I think we need maybe even some small homes in this instance. And hey, I honestly mean it. I'll come out and help you build one. So we need to get zoning priorities worked out to be able to do this with the municipality, and this has to get done. Yeah, it has to.
Mr. Quinn.
So yes, emergency housing, I fully hear and I understand it is a large issue in our community. My wife teaches a lot of students that will go from motel to motel, and it's a detriment to their education, and it is holding them back in that regard. As for the small housing, again, I fully support it as long as it is going to meet the building code, because we don't want to build something that's not going to last.
And in closing,
Thank you. Hi. I think that at the root of your question about homelessness is, again, we're coming back to poverty. Yeah, I think we're coming back to inequity again. I think we're coming back to those who have a lot and those who have a little. Yeah. Again, in order to actually fix the homelessness problem, we have to address the core issue of poverty. So again, we're looking at things like raising ODSP, 20% immediately and then double it in our second year. We need to do that. That's a huge issue for people to be able to afford a place to live. Obviously, housing, as we've already talked about, we've got a lot of social housing fixing and building that we're promising to do in the province. And as MPP, the job would be to get our fair share here in Cornwall and surrounding area based on need, not based on population. Those who have more, truly, they need to pay more. Again, we keep coming back to, if you have it, you need to put in your fair share. We're not expecting anyone to go bankrupt. We're not trying to ruin anyone's life here. We're just looking, again, at the human experience and that it could be more beautiful and more caring than it is right now.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for the great questions and the respect shown by all here this evening. It was great to hear the candidates come to the forefront with their answers and speaking as honestly as they can. We appreciate it, candidates. At this time, we're going to turn it over to our candidates for 2.5 minutes to give you their final pitch for the evening in regards to next Thursday's election. The first candidate will be your Green Party of Ontario candidate, Jacqueline Milner.
Jacqueline Milner, that name is going to be on the ballot. What I'd like you to remember is the Green Party is about finding solutions to the old problems, finding new solutions to the old problems with respect for the planet. This is our foundational home above all else. I mean, we want nice little green spaces around our tiny homes so that we can, enjoy the birds and the bees and everything else and feel good. I mean, we all know the difference, how we feel when we're in a cement jungle, shall we say. I used to live in Toronto, so I know what that is like. And compared to some place like here where there's trees, I mean, that is just a nicer environment. So Greens are about solving problems with respect for the planet. And I just want to put in there to get it done with respect for the planet. June 2nd, vote for the Green Party of Ontario, Jacqueline Milner. Thank you.
Your PC Party of Ontario candidate, Nolan Quinn.
Thank you. So first off, I want to commend all of the other candidates putting the name forward. Obviously, it's a commitment from the family and from yourselves to be able to do it. Although we may not agree on all of the issues, we all want what's best for Ontario. Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about experience. I personally don't believe politics is a career. It's the action on a local level that really matters. And I think the past has spoken for myself that I truly believe in our community. I've been running a successful business for the last 12 years that tries to look after any organization that comes knocking on the door and looking for our help in that regard. At the same time, raising a young family and got married while doing some charity work as well. On top of the personal commitments, I've been trying to step up as much as possible for the community, and I see this as an extension. So 2 years, I was the chair of the United Way, as I mentioned earlier. So the face of the campaign, as much as I do not love to be the face, seeing my photos in town on some of the signs is not my cup of tea, but it's something that I've embraced for our community because I know we need strong representation. Then I joined the board of directors for almost 6 years, and I spent 2 of those years as president. But knowing that we always need new conversations at the table, it wasn't a position that I saw as a long-term, I'm going to stay there for a decade. Right after leaving the United Way, I jumped into the Children's Treatment Center, another extremely important organization to our community. And I'm lucky enough to follow Angelo Towndale and listen to what he does. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and I see him as the godfather of philanthropy in our town. So I'm very blessed to be able to be on that board. I'm proud to have raised, with help of the community and my staff, over $250,000 for CHEO over the last 10 years. And again, I get the credit for it, but it's our community. Max Keeping, when he came to one of our United Way events, said we truly do live in one of the most generous areas of Ontario. So some other organizations that I truly am committed to is Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Beyond 21, the Cornwall Hospital Foundation. My commitment to bettering our community is my experience that I'm taking forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Ontario Liberal Party candidate, Kirsten Gardner.
I was first, now I'm okay. I'm here because I was frustrated at the municipal level. I am not a career politician either, but I do gravitate to places where I feel I can make a difference. I have been involved in a lot of organizations for the past 20 years. I can list them if you'd like. But they've been diverse, and my career has been diverse, whether it's tourism with the Long Sault Parkway, whether it's working as senior manager with the Ontario government, whether it's teaching at TR Léger. I've always gravitated towards helping people, and that's why I'm here. That's why I got into politics. I was in a situation where I looked at what was going on in our community at the local municipal level and decided to put my name forward to see if I could make a difference. It's been that experience that has driven me to want to be at the next level and to change. And I am one of those people that puts people before the party and before politics. I've had discussions with, before I even got into this, with different folks about that. And I'm here for this riding. This riding's not my third choice. It's not my second choice. It's my first choice. And I, as all of us, and it's true that, to put your name forward, to be supported by your family, to go through this process is something. So I do commend the other candidates. But I'm going to tell you quickly what I won't do. I don't leave the table with difficult discussions. I don't give up. There's a historical train at Upper Canada Village that I've helped save not once, but twice, 20 years difference. I come back for these things. When I volunteered at Victim Services, and this is all hours of the day, all days, 7 days a week, I came back to sit on the board. I don't give up. I won't give up on this riding. And that's why I'm here. I want our riding to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Ontario NDP candidate, Wendy Stephen.
We made it to the end. Well done, everyone. You must be exhausted. I'm here because I need something to change. As a mom, as a teacher, as a human who cares about other people, we can't keep going down the current path. We can't keep electing the same representatives and expecting something different. So if we actually want something different, and at the gut level, I think a lot of people are feeling this too, we need to actually elect a different party. We need to elect somebody who's here offering something that maybe we haven't seen before. And change can be scary, but change can also be wonderful. We can have a community where we lift people out of poverty. It keeps coming up time and time again that is the root cause of so many of the social issues that we are seeing. And if we can address poverty, we are going to see, we're going to move mountains here. It's going to be incredible. And the cost savings, if you actually go from the actual source of the problem rather than band-aiding and trying to solve the problems as you go down the line. Through investing in things like public services, through adding mental and dental to OHIP, we're going to save, average Ontario people thousands of dollars. And we want to invest in people. We want to repeal Bill 124. We want to bring respect and dignity to women, to people of color, to Indigenous people, to us LGBTQIA+ people. All of them matter. Every single person matters. And if you're someone like me who's frustrated with the current system, who's feeling disengaged, who feels like things are broken, I feel it too. And we can fix these broken things. We need to come together and we need to demand that things change. Otherwise, the status quo continues, and I've seen it for at least my entire adult life, and I'm tired of it. I think we can do better. I want to fix what's broken. So on June 2nd or before, advanced polls are open. My name is Wendy Stephen. I'm with the NDP and Andrea Horvath, and I hope you vote for me. A vote for me is a vote for change. I'm strong, and I'm ready, and I'm here to work for you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the candidates, and especially thank you to the audience. What a terrific audience this evening in regards to the respect shown to everybody and to our candidates. Not very often you can come to one of these public debates and hear no heckling of any. That is a compliment to everybody. Thank you to the candidates for sharing your thoughts this evening and for your commitment to our community and our province. I'm sure that tonight's discussion will be greatly assisting our residents as they make their choice for next Thursday's election. It's especially humbling within our riding here to have great people like yourselves put your name on a ballot. At the end of the day, as you mentioned many times this evening as candidates, we're humbled to have you all running to represent us. So thank you very much. Also to you, the folks who are watching this evening and who are here live, you have a great decision ahead of you on June 2nd. That's a decision you have to make, who guides this province over the next so many years. Please exercise your right to vote. We live in a democracy. Many people fought for this right long before us. Exercise your vote. And to the Chamber of Commerce and the Social Development Council, thank you for joining your teams this evening. As both your organizations represent this community and extended community with great respect and dignity, we appreciate the support that you brought together and allowing people to hear these candidates this evening. We're so blessed in our community and surrounding area to have people who want to step up, as well as the groups within our community. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, we wish you a great evening. Don't forget to vote. Please exercise your right on June 2nd. Good night.